In 35 days, a nation of 35 million people was erased from the map, because two of the most powerful regimes on Earth had secretly agreed, weeks before the first shot, to divide it between them. Britain and France declared war to protect Poland. Not a single Allied soldier set foot on Polish soil. September 17, 1939. Poland is surrounded from every direction. 450,000 Soviet troops cross the eastern border. The last escape route collapses within hours. So how does a nation disappear in 35 days? And where were the Allies who swore they would never let that happen? To understand the fall of Poland, you have to go back further than September 1939. Long before Adolf Hitler took power in January 1933, he had already laid out his vision in Mein Kampf. Germany had been stabbed in the back, he argued, betrayed by Jews and communists, humiliated by Versailles. The only path forward was Lebensraum, living space, new territory to the east, a racial empire built on conquest. Poland, in Hitler's view, was not a real country. Two ideological enemies, one shared target, but that convergence was still years away from being formalized. In January 1934, Hitler actually signed a non-aggression pact with Poland, but the motive was purely tactical. He needed to neutralize any chance of a French-Polish military alliance while Germany secretly rearmed. It was never about peace. It was about buying time. Then came the expansion. Each move more aggressive than the last, and each one met with the same response: nothing. In March 1935, Germany reclaimed the Saar region. The world watched. No military response came. In March 1936, German troops marched into the Rhineland, a demilitarized zone under the Versailles Treaty. Britain and France watched again. Hitler noted the silence and grew bolder with every step that went unpunished. In March 1938, German forces rolled into Austria. The Anschluss was celebrated in the streets of Vienna. In September 1938, at the Munich Conference, Britain and France handed Hitler the Sudetenland, Czechoslovakia's border region. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain returned home waving a piece of paper, promising peace for our time. 6 months later, in March 1939, Hitler dismantled the rest of Czechoslovakia entirely, breaking every promise he had made. This was the moment the policy of appeasement finally collapsed under the weight of its own naivety. Britain and France now guaranteed Poland's borders. A bold political declaration, but geographically almost meaningless. Meanwhile, in April 1939, Hitler revoked his own non-aggression pact with Poland and ordered his generals to prepare Case White. The invasion plan was in motion. All that remained was to secure the eastern flank, and that required one more deal. On August 23, 1939, Germany and the Soviet Union signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a non-aggression agreement. But buried within it was a secret protocol that would reshape the map of Central Europe without firing a single shot. Eastern Poland, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, and Bessarabia would fall into Stalin's sphere of influence. Western Poland would go to Hitler. Two regimes, one plan. Poland had no idea the trap had already been sealed. On August 22, Hitler gathered his generals at Obersalzberg and made his intentions clear. This was not going to be a war of occupation. It was going to be a war of annihilation. Men, women, and children of Polish descent were to be killed without pity, without hesitation, without mercy. 3 days later, a German battleship sailed into the harbor of Danzig flying ceremonial flags. The Schleswig-Holstein was supposedly there to commemorate a World War I battle. It was a lie. Hidden below deck were over 200 combat marines, loaded and waiting for the order to attack. On August 31st, SS operatives dressed as Polish soldiers staged a fake attack on a German radio station in Gliwice. A man named Franciszek Honiak, drugged, shot, left as evidence, became the pretext for a war already decided. By morning, Goebbels' machine was broadcasting the story of Polish aggression. The victim had been framed as the aggressor. At 4:43 a.m. on September 1, 1939, the Schleswig-Holstein opened fire on the Polish depot at Westerplatte. No declaration, no ultimatum. The first shot of World War II, fired against a nation that had done nothing. Within hours, 1.5 million German soldiers were crossing the border from 3 directions simultaneously. Germany brought 2,750 tanks. Poland had 210. Germany deployed 2,315 aircraft. Poland had 800, most destroyed within 2 days. The tactic was blitzkrieg, tanks, dive bombers, and motorized infantry moving together at a speed Poland had never encountered. 150 towns and villages were bombed in the opening days. The town of Wylan was flattened on day 1. On September 3, Britain and France declared war on Germany. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then silence. No troops. No offensive. No Western Front opened. The declaration was words, nothing more. The entire German Air Force was committed over Poland. France's border was barely defended. The window existed. It closed and used. The Poles fought back harder than anyone expected. Let's destroy one myth right now. Polish cavalry did not charge German tanks with sabers. That is German propaganda, manufactured and repeated for decades. At Mokra, the Wolinska Cavalry Brigade destroyed over 50 German tanks and inflicted 800 casualties in a single engagement. Warsaw's air defenses downed over 80 German bombers between September 1st and 6th. The Germans retaliated on September 10th with 17 consecutive bombing raids in a single day. The Battle of Bazura saw Polish forces push the German advance back 20 kilometers, the largest counterattack of the campaign. But by September 19th, the Poles at Bazura were encircled. 20,000 soldiers were dead. Inside Warsaw, 150,000 civilians dug anti-tank ditches with their bare hands. On September 15th, the garrison repelled 3 major attacks in one day. 140,000 Polish soldiers against 175,000 Germans, backed by 1,000 artillery pieces and 1,000 aircraft. And still, no allies came. On October 6, 1939, the last operational Polish military unit surrendered at the Battle of Kock, ending 35 days of sustained resistance against 2 simultaneous occupying forces. 35 days was all it took to erase 21 years of Polish independence, the entire lifespan of the Second Polish Republic, born from the ruins of the First World War. The final count stood at 120,000 Polish soldiers killed in combat, against an enemy that had deployed over 1.5 million German troops alone on the first day of the invasion. But the numbers alone do not capture what had just happened, because Poland never signed a formal surrender at any point during the entire 35-day campaign. There was no ceremony, no document, no capitulation, only the progressive annihilation of every remaining unit capable of continued organized resistance in the field. 2 totalitarian armies, moving from opposite directions, met at the center of the country and drew a line along the Bug River, dividing Poland between them with surgical precision. That line had been decided weeks earlier, in a secret protocol, by 2 governments that had publicly declared non-aggression while privately coordinating the destruction of a sovereign state. The protocol had been executed with total fidelity, every territorial clause fulfilled, every deadline met, 0 diplomatic resistance capable of disrupting the operational timeline. On October 6, the same day Polish resistance collapsed, an offer of peace terms was extended to Britain and France. Both rejected it immediately and without negotiation. The rejection confirmed that the war would continue, but it also confirmed that it would continue without Poland, which had already ceased to exist as a functioning state. The Allies who had declared war specifically to defend Poland's sovereignty arrived at their decision 3 days after the invasion began and provided no direct military intervention at any point. France, which had a treaty obligation and a common border with Germany, did not advance while the entire German Air Force was committed to the Eastern Front. Britain, which had signed a mutual assistance pact just days before the invasion, conducted no ground operation and no meaningful military action in Poland's defense. The nation for which the Second World War was formally declared was the only nation that received no effective military assistance from the powers that declared it. Poland had mobilized late, deployed under strategic disadvantage, faced a 2-front war within 17 days, and held Warsaw for 27 days against overwhelming force. On September 27th, Warsaw surrendered, with a civilian death toll exceeding 20,000 inside the capital alone, the first major European city to be systematically bombed from the air. By October 6th, the operational reality was absolute. The Second Polish Republic, which had existed since 1918, had been partitioned between 2 empires in 35 days. The secret protocol signed on August 23rd had not been a diplomatic maneuver. It had been an operational order, and it had been executed exactly as written. What followed the military defeat was systematic annihilation on a scale the world had never witnessed before. SS commanders reported killing 200 Polish civilians per day within the first week of occupation. By September 27th, Heydrich reported that only 3% of the Polish upper class had survived. 3%. Over 1 million civilians were deported to Soviet labor camps. 20,000 officers were executed at Katyn Forest. By the end of World War II, 6 million Polish citizens were dead, 1/5 of the entire pre-war population. And yet, Poland never stopped fighting. Polish soldiers flew in the Battle of Britain, bled at Monte Cassino, and fought across North Africa. Polish intelligence helped crack the Enigma code and brought the first detailed reports of the Holocaust to the West. The freedom they earned in 1939 did not come in 1945. It came with a different occupation, a Soviet one. Poland was the cause of the Second World War. Poland was abandoned by its allies. Poland never surrendered. That freedom, paid for in blood, in ruins, in 50 years of resistance, finally came in 1989. That is the story worth remembering.